Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we're going to talk about soul contracts, and we're going to expand on those quite a bit because I've seen some stuff out lately about soul contracts, and anytime I see something that's in one level of consciousness, I like to put out something that might shift the perception of it a little bit, because I've seen a lot of stuff to where if you did something to the effect is if you did something that was not of the highest, then you really weren't in a soul contract or something to that effect. It didn't really ring to me. So I wanted to put out my understanding of soul contracts, which is they kind of are what they are. And these are all things you do agree to do. No matter how shitty you played out a role, no matter what you did, no matter how criminal it seemed, it was a soul contract that you had agreed to. So there's no judgment in what is being done. And when you start putting in judgment as to what you did in a soul contract, that's your human doing that. Because the soul is not going to judge anything. Anytime you're judging something, judging what someone else is doing, judging what you are doing, which normally it's always our own judgment kind of coming back at us. But when we start doing that, that is not our soul doing that. Because our soul doesn't judge anything. The soul doesn't care about those things. Those are all human things. I see a lot of people talk about, if we used an example of feeling a real connection with someone, right? And they say that person was married. And someone will look at that and go, oh, that's not, that might not be, but maybe you get in a relationship with that person. And all of a sudden now that was a soul contract. You were supposed to come into that person's life. You agreed to do that. Maybe in some instance you agreed, maybe the marriage dissolves. You might not even stay with the person. Your whole point might have been to come in and dissolve that reality for that person. That was your contract. Because a marriage is a human contract. The soul doesn't give a shit about that. Soul doesn't give a shit about any of your human contracts, okay? These are not a contract to show up and do some kind of human thing. These are contracts to push you into a higher frequency, to clear things from your body, to clear things from the collective. That's why you see some pretty horrendous acts, what our humans going to view as very horrendous acts taking place. And it pushes the collective forward because it clears anger, it clears sadness, it gets people motivated, it gets people mobilized about something and pissed about something. But it was still a soul contract they were playing out. Everyone involved in it. That was the point. They did it to push humanity forward. So really all you can say from your highest aspects is thank you for your service. Because that's what you just did. Now our human's not going to look at it that way. A human's going to want to say the human's going to judge the acts. And you're going to go back and see a lot of things that you might have done, either during this existence or you start having access to all your existences, all the stuff you have done, because it's all happening now at the same time, and start judging those things, judging what other people are doing. Not understanding that these are all contracts that were agreed to. But you're not there for the reason you think you're there. You can take any human experience you're having, and the reason you were there was not the reason you thought you were there. So when it doesn't go the way your human wants it to go, you get pissed about the whole situation and say, well, this was a disaster. But on a soul level, it was exactly what it was supposed to be. Now, can you break contracts? Can you change contracts? Can you rewrite contracts? Absolutely. But you cannot do them unless you know what your contracts are. And if you're in your human consciousness, you don't know what your contracts are because you're just acting out your contracts. You're just going through them. Just look at yourself like in your mind, just mowing through contracts you signed. And that's what you're doing basically when you're sleeping. When you're in your human consciousness, you're going through all these activities you agreed to do one way or the other. That's one of the things you do when we're sleeping. We're going through all these contracts and go, okay, we're going to do that one. We're going to go ahead and enact that one. We'll go ahead and hit this one while we're over here. And that person is going to do that role too. Okay, let's all get together and play out this movie and see how it comes out at the end. And see if we all get to where we need to get to, or do we got to do a sequel and do this again? That's going to be up to us. Now, when you start reaching different levels of consciousness and you understand your contract, and when I say you understand your contract, you understand the role you're supposed to play in that reality and the role you did play out. And we do have choices. But you don't really have a choice when you're in your human consciousness. There is no choice. Any choice you think you have, it's a mirage. You don't have any. It's a harsh truth, but once we understand that truth, in a sense, we don't have a choice. We're doing what is just unconsciously what's being given to us. We're calling forth all this stuff unconsciously. Because when you're a human, you don't hear your subconscious. You don't know what it's saying. When the more conscious you become, you hear your subconscious. You hear your human, you hear your higher aspects. You hear both of them, and you kind of decide in the beginning, you have to decide which way you want to go because you can start to hear this stuff. You understand more. You understand why you're in a reality. You understand the role you were to play out. And once you played that role, and maybe you played it again and again and again and again, and you're like, you know what, I don't need this anymore. No one's getting anything out of this anymore. We're not moving the needle anymore. And to me, there's always like a physical marker along the way where you kind of feel yourself getting pushed out of the reality, but the human kind of wants to hold on because it doesn't want to go into the next thing. But if you just let it close out because the contracts are completed, you can just move on and say, you know, could I stay in this and keep repeating this? Sure, but we're going to close it out. And then you're going to go through different timelines and you can see the whole contract and you go, I don't need to play that role anymore. They can draft they can get someone else for that version of me in that movie. I don't want to do that anymore. Like, I've done this. These contracts are paid. We don't have to keep reliving this stuff. Whether I'm reliving it with the same person or I'm reliving it with the same energy, the same situation, just coming through a different form, I choose not to do that anymore. I can draft a new agreement. Now, when you're drafting a new agreement, everyone in the reality has to agree to that. And it takes very open, honest communication to be able to draft a new agreement. To say, okay, this is what this reality is. This is the roles we're going to play in this reality. Is this what you want to do? Can you hold yourself to the highest? Can you come from a place of purity and love in this reality, or can you not do that? Can I not do that? You really have to hold yourself accountable too when you're looking at your contracts, but you cannot do that if you don't know what they are. Anything you've ever done, you have a contract. If I go out and say hello to the mailman, that was my contract, to say hello to the mailman. Everyone you have a relationship with, anyone you come in contact with, technically there's some contract there. But you can choose when it's done. You can choose when we're not linked anymore. I did a video on, I don't remember what it was, something about, it was, I think it was telepathy, talking about, picking up different things going on with different people. And there is also a part of that where if you keep picking up things going on with people and they're not in your physical reality, you can also say, I don't need to know about that anymore. We have the power to do all that stuff and go, their reality is going to play out. I don't play a role here. If I need to play a role here, they'll show up. I don't need to be privy to that anymore. And you're not really shutting the information out. You're almost just moving to a different consciousness where it's not there. If you need to tune into it again, you can tune into it again, but just it coming in because you do still have that a curiosity. There's some human thing going on in a sense to keep bringing that information in. There's a connection there. You can also say, okay, whatever, universe, just take that out. I don't need to worry about that anymore. If I have a role to play and I agree to that role, they'll show up physically. And if they're not here physically, do I know things might be collapsing over there? Yeah, but that's exactly what they need to go through. And I don't have a part in that. If they're not physically in front of me, I don't have a part in that. If I had a part in that, they would be physically in front of me. If they're not, I don't have a part in it. So, and the same thing with your contracts. You can keep yourself in contracts in perpetuity if you want to, and never close them out and keep reliving the same stuff. Or you do get to levels of consciousness where you can say, I've done this. I don't need to play out this role anymore. I don't need to play the savior role. I don't need to play the person that's going to push this person into this or push this person into that, or whatever your role was, whether you're playing a mother figure or a grandmother figure or a sibling figure or, a higher aspect or a lower aspect of them or a lack-filled aspect of them or the higher aspect of them. A lot of times we'll play out a higher aspect of people for a long time, but if they start using you as a crutch and they don't want to do the work themselves because they know that they can show up and you're going to tell them, in a sense, what what could help them. And you've done that over and over again. You've opened yourself up for these people over and over and over again. And they don't respect it. They're not reciprocating it in a sense. And they're not listening to the advice they're asking for. Then there comes a time when you close out that contract and go, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. We don't need to keep doing this. This is a cycle we don't need to keep doing. Our human will get wrapped up in a lot of realities for long periods of time. They will not void contracts. They will not let them die because they don't have the sight to see they're even in a contract. They still have a victim mentality that this is happening to them. And we were all in that too. Like, oh, this is happening to me, when it's not happening to me. I agreed to it. Yeah, it's screwed up. Yeah, I'm playing a pretty screwed up role here. Yeah, I'm clearing a lot of stuff, but I did agree to this. And I'll agree to when it's done. But you got to be able to see your contracts first to be able to mark something complete. And that seems to be sort of some information that can get lost in translation, that everything also is a contract. And just because a human might view something as, diabolical, as a terrible thing that just happened, it was still a soul contract for the collective. Sometimes the most catastrophic things we see are to move the collectives forward, because that's what it takes. Sometimes it has to get super extreme. It has to get super extreme again. Certain aspects of the population hit people harder than other things hit people. So different people sign up to do different things to trigger humanity, to actually become more humane. Because left to our own devices, humans are not humane. Humans are out for themselves. That's when we're all in our human aspect, we're out for ourselves. We don't care about anybody else. You don't have the capacity to care about anybody else. You care too much about yourself. You don't care about yourself the way you do when you're in your higher aspects, where you respect yourself. You just are in self-preservation mode, that it's all about you. Yeah, and you don't really care what anybody else thinks. Now, in a sense, you're going to also, in a way, care about what everyone thinks of you. But you really don't care how they feel about it. It's a strange way how things will flip and merge and change into one thing and merge into another. And yes, we can shift contracts. Yes, we can rewrite contracts. We can change them to agreements where everyone knows exactly what's going on and no one's in it unconsciously. But it takes two people to tango in that sense. And if you're with people who are not, you know the kind of timelines they're creating, and if you keep them in your reality, if you keep different agreements with them, when their reality starts to collapse, you're gonna go with it. You're gonna be dragged down with it. That's why we get pretty picky who we enter in agreements with. And when contracts are done, we do close them out. And when someone shows up again, we look and see, do I really have a role to play, or can I really add something to this? Because what you're gonna find is when you're in your higher aspects, everything has a purpose. You're not there to use people anymore. Our humans show up to use people. That's why we showed up as humans, because we wanted something. We wanted, whether we just wanted gratitude for being there for someone, we wanted something out of it. That's why we were there. You go from using people to unity. You go from using people to having a purpose to being there. Is it a purpose for me to be here? If there's no purpose for me to be here, there's no point of me being here. If we're just going to relive the old timelines and we're going to all play out the same roles again, there is no purpose for me to be here. So look at your purpose somewhere. You can almost change it from contract to purpose. What's my purpose here? And if you don't have a purpose anymore, close out the contract and move on. You try to rewrite it if that feels aligned, but everyone in the reality has to agree to the new agreement. And if you're the only one that wants to do that agreement and the other people in the reality don't want to, you're going to just have to close it out. Humans don't really believe we're going to do that. Humans are kind of shocked when we close things out and move along, because humans are still wrapped up in the old realities, whereas we're 10 realities a different way at one point, because we can't stay wrapped up in it anymore. And if we are wrapped up in it, eventually it'll come up to clear. The marker will come due at some point, because we have to clear that, even if it's just energetically out of our reality. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.